All right, and here we are, Freelancers Roundtable. Um, we have a special guest today, Michelle. But why don't we just go around and do intros in general for folks that may have not seen our previous videos, and so that Michelle can introduce herself as well.
Let's start with Michelle Ellis.
Thanks, Adam. As you
Welcome
mentioned,
to the show.
thanks. I'm Michelle Ellis. I'm a freelance creative director and copywriter, and new to the whole game.
So new, as in you've only been freelancing for a while, or you just called yourself a creative director out of the gate?
No. What?
How long have you been a copywriter?
So I've been a copywriter for about 8 or 9 years. As you know well, Adam is my first art director partner.
Yeah. And you've been freelancing specifically.
And I've been freelancing. Yeah, I'm new to the freelance game. So I've been a full-time freelancer for a couple months. It's a scary world out there.
Is it really? Okay. I can't wait to ask you a bunch of questions.
Yeah, me too.
Nick B, what about you? You've been doing this for longer.
Yeah, so I've been doing software for almost 15 years, but freelancing for just about 2 years, a little bit over 2 years now, actually, so almost 2.5. Mostly mobile. Well, actually, pretty much exclusively mobile on freelancing, but over my career has been mobile and web and a smattering of other things. Basically anything that's interesting. How about yourself?
Freelancing 13 months as of this month. And I did freelance a little bit earlier in my career out of necessity because I was unemployed. But I've been a designer for about 15 years. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, what we want to talk about is, what I want to ask about is first, how did you know you were ready to go freelance? You know, like what planted the seed, and how did you know you were ready to go off on your own? And sometimes you just don't even feel ready and you do it anyway.
Sure, that's true. Why don't we start with Michelle, since she's the most recent on this whole path?
Talk to us about your decision.
So the decision. Well, I think for a long time, the mentality is like the stakes are just too high to go freelance. The risk is too high. And then at some point, the stakes are too high to not do it. The stakes are too high to stay at a job where you sort of lack the level of control over your earnings or your hours or your the shape that your career is taking, to not take control of it. And for at least for creative directors, writers, designers, people like us, freelancing is a really accessible way if you have the motivation to take control of all of those factors. So I think like the COVID era, and I had a baby, and all these other factors sort of amplified when I would have probably gone freelance anyway in my career. I think it was always going to be a point where it made sense, but it made the flashpoint happen probably earlier than I expected.
Mm-hmm. And you specifically, you have like a company name. Do you feel like you're starting your own business with the? Do you feel like you're going to make hires in the future and grow an agency?
That's that's my intent. I really am intentionally trying to think about this as larger than just a temporary venture on my own. And I think that that's just knowing myself, that if I don't commit to this to the fullest degree, then I'll probably be tempted to go back to an agency setup. And I really want to give it a shot. And I think that for a lot of people, that takes a couple of years to find your bearings and get your business sorted out. I'm totally unequipped to manage like the business aspect of all of this. I don't know about you guys, but I think it'll take me a couple of years to figure that stuff out. And I'm trying to to make it idiot proof so that I don't bail out on myself before I can really figure it out.
That's
Nick, what about you? You're an LLC as well, but you're Velocity Raptor, right?
That's me, yeah.
Oh.
But
Nice.
for me, like, I haven't really. I mean, I set up a corporation like right away and did all that stuff and like try to kind of brand it that way online. Like, I've struggled with that a lot. Like in terms of like, I don't have any immediate plans to like hire people or try to like launch an actual agency or anything like that. Like I've entertained the idea over the years, but like it's not something I'm like super committed to. So I've always kind of struggled with like how much do I brand myself as as an independent freelancer versus like someone that's working for like my own one person company or whatever. I still don't know if I have the right answer for that. And Adam, I don't think you haven't like put up like an actual brand, have you? You kind of brand yourself as yourself. Right?
I can't. You only get one shot at it, I think, and I can't settle on a name that I like. And I was getting enough interest in work offers without like pretending I'm bigger than I am. Even though like Matt Buckley, he reaches out to me and he's like, "Oh man, you should see the money these other folks are raking in just because they have a website and they look and feel bigger than they are." Like,
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
you could charge so much more if you just put a stupid name on it.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. Maybe that's true. I don't know.
Is that what people are doing?
Yes, that's what people are doing.
No.
They are very much so. Like they charge. I'm not going to use any names here, but they definitely like. I think a developer can charge on a one-on-one basis like upwards of $150 an hour. But if you're going through an agency, they'll charge you. An agency will charge you for that same developer $200 an hour if you like run the numbers. 250 bucks an hour if you run the numbers. And so that's what they're doing.
I would say that's so. I don't think it's always true, but it's also usually it's a blended rate too. So it's not as, I don't think it's as cut and dry as that. And I think maybe there's something to be said for just like slap a name on yourself and you're an agency. But I'm pretty sure like people will, if it's very clear that it's just you working for the agency, then it's like I don't think you're gonna.
Yeah, the jig is up. You can't.
Yeah, like I think most of the folks that we know that have done that are at least a handful of people that do that, and maybe they subcontract out to developers or whatever. But like, you got to be showing at least a few people in order to be able to do that.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, I don't know. So they're
subcontracting. They're subcontracting out.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. So I don't know if it's as cut and dry. I mean, personally, I don't really care as much because like I don't know. To me, like the margin on that sort of thing is iffy in terms of like if you're going to subcontract people, what do you subcontract them, and how much time are you spending managing them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas like if I just charge a flat rate and just it all goes to me, then I have less hassle and it is what it is. But I wanted to actually ask you, Michelle, about something you said. So you feel like trying to grow your operation like into an actual agency and hiring people is kind of the best way to keep yourself engaged in it, that's an interesting thought to me. Like, do you feel like if you don't do that, it'll be easier to kind of feel like you're just still full time or slide back to full time? I'm curious to hear more about your thought process on that, I guess.
Yeah. So I think that like an agency in a traditional model type sense is not the immediate goal, but tell me if you have the same experience. I think that when I was branded more as like, I mean, not even branded, when I had my portfolio up and I'm Michelle Ellis, copywriter, creative director, the audience for me, the individual, is agencies who want to hire a creative director and a copywriter. When I'm at Michelle Ellis behind Marsh and Meadow Creative Company, I am positioned, sure, I can plug in at an agency. I can work on a pitch. I can work on a creative sprint, but I can also have my own clients that I retain and bring in developers or designers to develop campaigns, as in more the function of an agency.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that was the big distinction of being more of a creative company versus an individual, was the audience that I felt relevant to. In terms of hiring people, I mean, a big problem for me that I'm curious where you guys fall on this spectrum is that I have a really hard time saying no to work. Every project is interesting to me. I want to work on every piece of business that shows up in my inbox. So I think that hiring people is, to me, the solution to being able to say yes to everything, but also not, completely overextending myself.
Yeah, I mean, I think the hard part for me is that like almost all of my business comes through referrals, and it's like people that have worked directly with me. So it's like I'm not
Mm.
like I haven't really tried to broach that yet in terms of like, well, they're reaching out for me, and now like how do I then transition that into a situation where I'm subcontracting somebody or whatever? It's like it's almost like it's this weird like chicken egg situation of like I don't really have a reputation established as like an agency in terms of that that whole piece, and so it's like I don't know. It feels like it would be disingenuous for just for somebody to say, "Hey, we want to hire you for this," and for me to say, "Okay, yeah," and then like, "Oh, by the way, it's going to be this person doing it." I guess there's like some intermediate world where it's like me and another person doing some of the work or whatever, and maybe that's how you get from square zero to square one or two or whatever on that. But that's kind of been the big thing holding me back from that aspect of it. But I don't know if
Yeah, I think the play is you take on a new client, or you say you have a running relationship with a client that you've already built up the trust. Maybe you've already laid the groundwork for a success, and then you kind of like, hey, I want to introduce you to my friend over here.
Right.
They are a designer that I've worked with in the past, and they're actually going to be picking up pieces of this project as I roll off onto something else.
right.
I've never personally had that conversation, but that's the way I'm going to try it.
Yeah, I think that can work. And also I think certainly for things where like it's not your primary expertise. Like I would have zero qualms out bringing in a designer as a subcontractor or like a web backend developer or whatever. Like that would be a much easier sell in terms of like, okay, here's a project I want to take on. I can't do it all by myself because there's design work or web work or whatever. That's another path forward, I think. That I haven't really encountered that yet. I mean, there's been a few times where I've tried to pitch designers and that sort of thing, and it hasn't really gone my way yet.
I'm sorry about that.
It's like, I mean, it's a lot of times it's people. I get people that already have designers, or they've already contract with a designer or whatever, and it's like trash. And I'm trying to like get them to reconsider. Again, sometimes it's a tough sell.
Yeah. So I often find the teams that are stacked full of developers and they just don't have the design piece. And sorry, Michelle, but sometimes they're like, oh, we don't need a copywriter. And then I read all their material.
Heard it all.
I'm like, holy shit, we need a copywriter.
Yeah, everybody's a writer. I mean, everybody's a designer too, right? How many times have you gone on a project and there's like something slapped together from Paint, or oh, I found this on Etsy and I really love it. Can you recreate this for me?
Oh man,
I mean,
I haven't experienced that one yet. That's got to be fun. The Etsy, like the laugh, love, learn, or whatever type.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Like, you can just buy that. You can buy that design. It's already made.
Yeah. So we broached the topic a little bit. How finding clients? Michelle, how have you found your first clients?
I've had some very nice introductions. A few from you, Adam. A few from various other places. Just like the weird random people that you met forever ago that come back. I've been trying to do some outbound marketing and develop some tools to like pull people in that are outside of my
like
my
what?
group of Contacts? Well, I'm going to tell you. So
Awesome.
one thing that I did that I would say is perhaps controversial is I developed a rate card and I put my rate out there for a specific set of projects that are copy related deliverables for startups specifically.
Mhm.
Founders, I mean, you guys work with founders all the time, I'm sure, on startups. They don't know how much things cost, and they don't know how to pull a team together. And so I figured out that I just need to give them a price point, and the 10 things on that rate card, a lot of them will pick 4 or 5 or 6 of them, and that's like your set of deliverables to go and launch the brand off of. But a rate card is, it's kind of a controversial way of putting yourself out there,
Why is that? Because you want to be flexible if you find a client that can afford more?
I think it's just not done. I think that people are really, I don't know, not transparent about what they're charging hourly, project-wise. I think it's safer to do that for a project than to put your hourly rate out there. A project rate there's so much that goes into calculating that there's like a high margin of error and there's a high margin of opportunity for you.
Okay, so your rate card, I'm getting more of a sense of what it actually is. It's project, little bit of description, and then a price. It's like a menu.
It's like a menu.
What I was thinking, the rate card was like, here's my hourly, here's my day rate, and then.
No, sorry. Yeah, I wasn't describing that right. This is a set of deliverables, and there are some criteria that are associated with it. Like all of these projects have to be done in 6 weeks or less. If you're not done in 6 weeks, you can't be decisive. If you make me do it 3 times, we're going to convert over to an hourly rate, which is going to cost you 3 times as much as what you thought you were going to pay. So there's like a high level of decisiveness required.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a great way, I think, for startups to get those assets in hand. This is like the long scroll 1-page website copy. This is the tagline. This is the bank of headlines that they're going to use to populate their early Instagram feed.
Mm-hmm.
And
So I got you.
Have you had success with that so far? Like, how long have you been doing that for? And like,
I've had light success. I've done 2 projects. I have 2 clients that I'm doing projects for off of that, but I have it on my website, so it's downloadable. If you enter your email address, 0 downloads, because I know if anybody downloads it. But I've been sending it out to some contacts, and I've gotten a couple hits that way. So,
are you sure 0? Because I could have swore I entered my email for this thing at one point.
I'm sure. I'm not sure. I better check.
I've had that panic moment with like different forms and stuff on websites where I'm just like, I feel like something should have come in by now for XYZ, and I'm like, I better go check it just to make sure. Yeah, it's
Stand
working.
by, guys. Let's see. Nope. I have personally downloaded it 4 times. Well,
you gotta test it.
I was testing it. It works, apparently. So if anybody wants to download it.
Do you want to plug your name of your business one more time for our listener?
Do you like that? A listener?
We're gonna have a listener one day. What is it? Marsh
and Meadow Creative Company.
Nice.
I want to keep it vague enough that, like, if I wanted a line of, I don't know, like hippie scented candles, it could all fall under the same branding.
You're thinking ahead.
It's all about the merchandising.
Hippie scented candles, really?
Sure, why not?
I can't find this rate card.
I don't know. All right, well,
is it under service?
Dig around a little bit. I think it's under services.
It's a startup rate card. So it looks as though you're targeting startups on purpose right here. Can you talk about that? Why? They're a nightmare. Just kidding. I love my startup clients.
I think that it's a really fun place to plug in with a brand. You don't have a ton of baggage. You can like really work with somebody who has an idea and a vision and shape shape what they're looking for. I think that there are some headaches that occasionally come with working with startups, and that's why I was really motivated to create a product that was like very timeline driven, so that we don't get lost in this like 6 month swirl of not making any decisions.
This
Or
is
if we
smart.
do, then I'm compensated fairly for it.
Yeah.
You guys don't like working with startups? No, you do. You
No.
love it.
No, totally. I think you need to be the right size. I think my
Yeah.
sweet spot has been the company that's, it's got to be like at least 4 years old. I just don't, evergreen projects are fun, but when you're doing design work, product design work, and the startup doesn't have a product yet, you better be getting paid really well. Like it's almost like they're outsourcing the core competency of the business, which is crazy. And sometimes working with those first-time CEOs is a pain in the ass. It's just not worth the trouble, and they expect a lot for nothing.
I also think it's nigh impossible to do at least engineering work in those early stage startups. I don't think I'd ever quote a fixed bid for that kind of thing unless I was like going to take the entire even then probably not, because it's too risky. Like everything changes like every other day, you know? So it's like I think for something that can be more fixed priced, like I think like copywriting, for example, like is a good example, I think, where you probably will get some more success with that around like, or like any kind of branding things that you guys would do, or iconography or that sort of thing. But when it comes to actually like developing a product, that's where I think it just gets nuts, because it's like the requirements change constantly. People change their mind just on a whim. It's like, I don't, to quote a project that could go like 6 months on a fixed bid basis, I would almost never do it. And I mean, in fact, like I've done very few fixed bid things. Everything I've done that's been fixed has been like, my general rule is like to stay like under like 15 or 20K for something fixed, because it's just too, to me, it's too much risk around like, well, what happens if it goes sour, or if the direction goes to the left and we didn't know what to do, and like, so it's mostly around risk for me. But like I've told Adam this, like I'd love to get into more kind of value pricing. I think every freelancer says that at some point, you know, like value pricing, like in terms of like charge more, you know, be more efficient than folks that have been doing this for less time, and take more profit. Like that's the only, once you get to like a certain hourly kind of max, like I think that's the only way you can kind of continue like sort of increasing your revenue.
For sure. Otherwise they just balk at your hourly.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's definitely a peak for hourly, and I can only work so many hours in a day. So, you know, that's,
and it's way more than me, by the way.
I'm like honestly, like I'm conscientiously trying to spend more time this year, like working, like capping my freelancing hours and spending other hours kind of doing things that will be revenue generating, like outside of hourly work.
Digital products, or
yeah, like books and like my own apps and that kind of stuff. You know, so yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I'm curious. I'm super eager.
This
to
is
find
now
out
a
how
personal finance roundtable. Welcome.
That's what freelancing is, though. Like you better have that part. Otherwise, you're gonna, you know, be working for someone else again right quick.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had this. You wanted to talk about this, and we can shift to that if you want. I think when I started thinking about doing this, like, and this will be in my someday to be written, like things you need to do before you become a freelancer book. I think like getting your finances in order before you consider doing this is like super important, to the point where I'm just like, I feel like
I didn't do that. What are you talking about?
For risk averse people, I guess.
No, I totally did. But can you expound on a little more?
I think like the most important thing I did was like I figured out like what do I need in the bank to go X months if I don't get clients, or if if clients go away, like basically like a buffer.
And your personal X months, was that 6 months?
It was like I had 6 months like when I started, and I also didn't give my notice full time until I had a client that was like locked in to start.
Oh yeah, you did the real ease your feet into the deep end.
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. And then from there, it's the real shift for me was like I have a separate bank account for my business and all that, and the real shift for me was like starting to like learn how to treat the business like a business and not like my own personal fund of money, um, and just treat everything in my life more like a business. You know, like what's the sort of what's my run rate every month, and like
Mhm.
all of those things are important to kind of figure out because when you're paying yourself or when when you're freelancing, it's like you might not have the steady income. There's ebbs and flows. Like you have to worry about more things, taxes, health insurance, etc., and all that.
Mhm.
Um, so I think yeah, for me it was like getting your finances in order before even thinking about it is super critical. But curious to hear how you guys kind of approach that and sort of because I'm super risk averse, so I was probably overly paranoid about it. Um, but that's not everyone.
I mean,
Yeah.
I had some surprises. So I freelanced, on the side when I was working full time, and it was great. You get a check. I would put half of it away, and spend the rest on whatever. And at the end of the year,
Your
you get the
gorgeous house.
1099. Yeah, you get the 1099. You pay the taxes on it from whatever you put away. That's fine. So in my head, like this is how it works when you do all of your income is freelance. And I've just been surprised, working with an accountant and working on, a month-long job and invoicing at the end of the month. And first of all, they might take another month to pay you.
For sure.
Yep.
And then I talked to my accountant. She's like, Michelle, you should wait until the end of the year to pay yourself this year because you really need to evaluate how much income you have and how many expenses you'll have because the first year is so weird. So even though I don't have months of no clients and no income, I still have no income right now. So
Interesting.
that was just a huge surprise at how much the whole financial process changed when 100% of my income started to come from my own clients.
Mhm.
It feels like everybody I've talked to has a slightly different tax structure, which is just a testament to our defined tax system in the United States. Like
Mm.
nobody does it exactly the same. It like comes down to what your accountant thinks you should do. Um,
Yeah,
so that's interesting. Are you set up as just like an LLC and you just
I'm set up as an S corp, so I'm an LLC, taxed as an S corp.
okay?
Don't ask me
Yeah, that's what I
what.
that's exactly what I have too.
Yeah, so apparently there are some advantages. I would not be the right person to tell you about those advantages. But
Yeah, so for the benefit of people that might be seeing this, because I literally agonized over this crap for like a year before I really understood how it worked. And I still don't even know if I understand exactly completely how it works, but the general rub of it is when you're just a straight LLC and you file as an LLC, um, the government you have to pay this personal income tax because when you only pay income tax, you're not paying like all these other little taxes that your employer used to pay. So like all the payroll tax, unemployment tax, social security, and all that stuff. Um,
Mhm.
so when you file as an S corp, you instead can pay yourself what they call a reasonable salary. So let's say you make $100,000 in a year, um, you could pay yourself 50 grand and only pay the payroll taxes on that 50 grand, and then the rest of the 50 grand you take as what they call distributions, and then that's just taxed as just income with no payroll tax or anything like that. So it's basically just a way to not get crushed on payroll taxes for like your entire income.
Mhm.
And that was something I had seen a bunch before I did this, so I knew about it already. Like other folks that I knew that were doing freelancing had done the same structure, and um, I don't know. I think it makes sense. It's kind of weird, and I don't know. Like I don't know. That stuff changes all the time, I guess, but it seems like the way to go. Um, in terms of like not getting destroyed on taxes. And I didn't do it the first year because I was like using an old LLC that I had for other things, and I was like, I'll figure it out next year. Like once I really get going, and like got crushed on taxes that first year.
Mhm.
So
That's what I'm looking at right now.
yeah, so you have that. That's the regular kind of LLC only setup.
I don't even have an LLC. I chickened out on that too when I saw how much it cost.
I mean, if you're going to go for the LLC, you might, if you're doing it full time, if you're only freelancing part time, S corp isn't really going to offer you much because the reasonable salary is so close to your total income that there's very little left for you to have a tax advantage. But if you're just going from a sole proprietorship to an LLC, you're taxed in exactly the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Approximately, right? It's the same. Yeah, you're taxed as if it's individual income.
If you file as an LLC only, like so an S corp is like it's a tax filing status. So like if you're an LLC, I'm actually a C corp. I'm not even an LLC. But it's
a C corp.
Yeah, I think my accountant just recommended it because I think it was cheaper in Massachusetts and it like didn't make a difference otherwise. But
yeah, it's not cheap. It's definitely a
it's still
commitment.
Expensive. Yeah.
How much are we talking?
I think I pay like I want to say like $500 a year to keep it going in Mass.
Yeah, that's what an LLC is too. It's $500 a year.
Maybe a C corp's a little bit less. Maybe it's like 3 or something. I don't remember.
And the first year it's more because you're like going on to LegalZoom and checking all the boxes to add on all of the different services that you need that first year when you're establishing everything. But
did you go through LegalZoom?
I did.
Wow. I went on that.
This was an unsponsored plug for LegalZoom.
No, it's not, because I was once in a divorce mediator's office who said to me, he was like, "Do you guys have a will?" And I was like, "It's a LegalZoom will." And he goes, "That's bullshit."
Says the accountant who charges you probably $300 an hour to represent the lawyer.
He was like, "None of that shit's ever going to hold up in any court." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, buddy."
Lord.
He was quite the opinionated guy.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't I didn't develop a will on there or any of their other many reputable products.
You're still trying to salvage this.
I have a friend who like does a lot of like contracting work, like not even related to technology. And he like a lot of people he knows like have been contracting on different capacities and stuff. And one time he was like, this country is so friendly to legal entities because you can literally create a legal entity, and if something goes wrong, you can just fold up shop and make a new one in like tomorrow. So it's like it's like from a protection standpoint, it's super useful. I mean from tech, like consulting, dev, and design and all that stuff, there isn't a ton of liability, but it's still good to have the legal protection.
I think on your side, Nick, you could like be responsible for a data breach that really screws over somebody, right?
Yeah, I've thought about that, and like I've had situations like if I ever run into a situation where I can see that that's possible, I'd probably just get like errors and omissions insurance or something like that. But like my standard contract basically absolves me of liability. Like it has all of that it has a clause around that sort of thing in it. So I'm definitely aware of that, and I probably would do E&O if like I needed to. But again, like the fact that I have everything behind a corporation means like they can't come take my house, which is good.
I can't. I don't have enough of imagination to really think what I could do to screw up a business.
I don't know.
Misspelled something?
Brand decision that's
you forgot
offensive.
to pay for a stock photo.
Oh yeah.
They're going to haul your ass to court and they're going to lock you up.
I used a typeface that they weren't allowed to use or something. Yeah. Those are real.
Yes, those are real. I know somebody who got in some.
What? Story time. Let me hear about that.
I'm curious about this.
this was a. I'm gonna try to predict any identifying details. I was working at an agency. Somebody used like a Google image search to comp something and
And
ripped down, like pulled down, I don't know, it's somebody's a photo from somebody's like personal photography site. This is common practice, right? Like it's a comp. Well, FPO wasn't on the photo, and like several rounds later, it gets pushed live onto our client's social feed, and the photographer found it and came after. Ultimately, the agency is responsible for making sure that that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And they wanted a lot of money.
Wow.
For the unauthorized usage of that photo.
Wow.
Something to the tune of $50,000.
Nice payday.
I don't know if they got that, but yeah. And that's why I don't know what the moral of the story is. Adam, what's the moral of the story there?
I mean, that shit exists. You learn about type usage and rights on images and stuff. At some point, I guess I learned at my time at Mullen and Grove Marketing how serious that stuff was. But
yeah,
I guess if you never did, you could really cause some havoc.
Yeah.
Just a pro tip for everybody out there, and potentially you guys, if you don't know this, if you can advanced search on Google, like Google image search, and like it lets you specify the rights in there. So like you can literally go on there and say like only show me photos that are like Creative Commons or free for commercial use or whatever. And I tend to do that anytime I'm doing anything on Google Image that's related to like software I'm building or whatever, just because like that exact reason. Like I don't want some like angry person coming after me to try to destroy me because I use some copyrighted image or whatever. And you get you get a lot of results for that. And I don't know, maybe some of it's just because people don't know how to set their access rights permissions correctly and they do it by accident, but it doesn't really matter just because like those things are pretty clearly laid out. If it's like on Flickr or whatever thing, like it's set one way or the other, and that thing just kind of filters things that way.
Yeah.
So
I only use Google image search for like concept type ideas for design things. When it's time to shop for an image, I have go-to places that I already have a cache of credits that I know if I fall in love with something, I can't afford it already. Like I'm not gonna put anything in front of a client that is not gonna be like go all the way. I think it's a newbie mistake, and it's a pitch deck. It's like it's pitch work mistake to be like, whatever, we can just do whatever. And then it finally gets to the end and they're like, did anyone check if we have rights to this shit?
It's such a nightmare too, because it's like they fall in love with a photo and you would think there's no other photo in the world that can do the same job. And that's a problem. Yeah. And I mean, obviously we all understand like photographers should be compensated for their work being used in a commercial application. Like that, There's no argument there, but yeah. Bad news bears.
Yeah. Well, that's fun. All right, hold on. I got other questions here in this Google Doc.
Okay.
Adam, there was something that I want to talk about.
Let's do it.
Working for friends and family.
I put that in there because
I feel like that is like you have a story to tell there. And that's what
no, not really. I just have a hot take around it. Like,
hit us with it.
Here's what you should do before you go down the path of making this mistake. Either take the project and say you're going to do it 100% for free and you get to make all the decisions, or no, it's going to suck every step of the way and you might lose a family member or a friend.
Lose a family member altogether.
That's my advice around that.
That's interesting. I don't think I've ever done paid work for family or friends before, and I don't think I ever will.
I've done a ton of work and I've never charged for it because I get to make all the decisions and it will be free. You can take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And they've taken it a couple times. Michelle, what's your take on this?
Um, I will do it. I won't charge for it. But it's very much a like, I don't ask questions. They give me the elevator pitch of what they need. I do not ask any clarifying questions.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Because it's not my problem if they explained it poorly. I go ahead and I do what I think they're asking for.
You're going to be doing it
And I
twice.
send it to them, and I don't say, "Let me know if you need anything else." They get they get one round of my best thinking.
Against their.
It's very effective.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about like taglines, headlines. Can you review my cover letter? Like,
Okay.
I do everything in my power to not invite multiple rounds of review, because that's where they'll get you.
That's where the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
You're like just trying to show, it's different for you guys. Like Nick, if you're developing something for a friend or family member, they can't just go ahead and tweak a great idea that you gave them, right? So in my case, they're like, I'm just trying to give them something that they can run with and interpret in whatever they want, way they want to. But it's a little bit more difficult for you guys and what you're experts in.
I mean, like, yeah, as far as software goes, it's like, it's either like, there are very few like small jobs, you know what I mean? Like if anyone friend or family that would come to ask me to go tweak a website or something like that, they probably already know how to do it themselves. And like, then on the other side of the scale is like people being like, I have this awesome app idea. And I'm just like, okay, well, I'll talk to you for an hour if you want to talk about how to get it built and like who to go to and what to do. And like, I've done that like a few times. But I'll never offer to go build something for like 3 months or whatever. Like, that's crazy.
Let me clear my schedule.
Yeah.
For your social network for people with hedgehogs.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
That one's almost
so many good ideas out there.
I'm usually a killer of dreams. It's usually just like, have you gone and checked to see if this has been done yet? No. You need to go check to see if it's been done yet. And then it turns out to have already been done like, 600 times. But yeah, I don't know. I'll help family. For me usually it's because developers we're just bucketed into people that can do whatever, fix your computer, fix your printer, fix your TV. That's usually where my odds and ends things kind of come into play. But yeah, that's a good one though. That's interesting. I bet I'm not surprised that you guys get more of that kind of stuff. Because you can get a lot of the work you guys do can be more well defined and sort of easier for somebody to be like, can you just do this for me?
Yeah. I did a logo for my mom and sister last year about this time. My mom takes apart used sweaters and turns them into gloves and mittens. And she has a company called, she has an LLC. It's called We Upcycled That is what the name of the company. She bought that and like went whole hog on it even before she told me she was doing this. So she's like, okay, it's called We Upcycled That by K&J. And I'm like, who the fuck is K&J? So I had to make that logo. And I charged her for a typeface because I went really nuts with a really flowery display typeface that I would never purchase on my own. So I think I charged her $20, but I spent like 6 hours on her, graphics and stuff.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was it's great. She's making a killing.
Charitable service. We upcycle that.
We upcycled that. So far, only upcycled sweaters so far.
Are they on Etsy?
No, she doesn't want to go that far on it. She just puts them on Instagram and Facebook, and people are like, I want that one and that one and that one, and she'll do the transactions. She wants to keep it small enough so she doesn't have to claim an income on it.
Gotcha.
She's just she's a hobbyist, and she wants to keep it small.
I can't wait to look this up later.
I don't know if she's got a site. It's you got to go to Instagram.
I'm going to Instagram.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to Instagram.
Surfing Instagram online, like on a desktop, sucks. I just don't like it.
I'm not picky.
Okay. Let's talk about some like red flags you guys have seen or learned to spot over your time dealing with clients, freelance clients in general? How can you spot a good client or a not so good client?
That's a good one.
I got
Can you
one.
guys?
Yeah.
Are
Oh
you
yeah.
good at that?
If they want to haggle over price, yes,
Mhm.
it's not a good sign. I've never had a great client who has started off or had a haggle around price at the beginning of a relationship.
Interesting.
Only difficult ones.
So tell me how would that, what do you mean by haggling? So they say, what's your rate? And you say, my rate is X. And they say, would you do it for
Yeah.
50% of that?
No, I wouldn't do 50% of that. But just if you
That's what
think
they'd
about
say
it,
though.
huh?
But they would say like,
No, just any if they want to get $10 off an hour for your hourly rate, they're either very shrewd, like they're good negotiator,
mhm,
or it just starts it off. It starts it off on the wrong foot for me.
yeah.
I would say a red flag for me has been, and not necessarily that like they've turned out to be bad clients, but definitely end up being the more challenging ones. It's like if you work with a client and there's a clear, they're not like their primary expertise is not in something technology related, then that's probably going to be a
Mhm,
slog. Like because and a lot of companies are like that, but they'll have like one or two people on the team that are sort of their CTO or whatever. But like sometimes you have
Mhm.
folks where the person that's kind of in charge really um, doesn't have a lot of expertise in tech, and they're not bad per se, but they're challenging because you end up having to explain things more often. It's harder to explain things. You're just gonna
Yeah,
spend more time on that aspect of things.
totally. That's the
mhm.
pitfall of the first time CEO. Um, you know, client with an idea, cobbling together a team. That's what happens with those. You spend a lot of time on education,
Yep.
more time than you're probably getting paid for.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hmm.
So how do you have any way to like how do you what questions would you ask to if you had second thoughts about someone you had met? How do you dig a little deeper?
I think for me it's just like knowing what everyone's background is, like if possible, and then kind of like you can kind of tell on meetings like how much like a CEO, for example, is going to defer to the people in the room on their side that kind of are the experts in their areas. Like
Mm.
if they're talking over them or kind of, overriding them often, that's kind of a
Oh,
good
that's
sign, that you're going to have some handholding in your future.
Mhm.
you can expect to be treated in a similar fashion, probably.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's like it's hard for me because I've done freelancing for a lot of like software companies, so it's like they get it
Mhm.
already and they know how things work and how estimates work, and like it hasn't been horrible in that regard. Um, I've had a few like prospective clients where like they've just come to me and said like we want to do X and like we don't really know how to do it or how much it's going to cost or what to do, and like I've tried to like I tend to try to be really direct with people like that. Like I'm not going to go and try to sell them a bridge, I'll just say, "Look, you don't know what you want right now. Like let's do some kind of strategy thing and like let me spend some time working with you to try to figure out what you want." And like we did a bunch of those in the Raise Labs days, and I think they're valuable. I haven't had any success selling them. I don't know. I think people really want you to just solve everything for them with a fixed price and a bow on it, and I just
Mhm.
it's yeah, like I said before, that's to me that's too much of a risk. Like I'd rather go into a contract having spent a little bit of time actually trying to figure out the right way to build something and what
Mhm.
they actually want to build, etc.
Yeah, I've talked myself out of projects. Not I've talked clients out of projects just by asking a bunch of questions in the upfront, like, "What are your goals with this? What print run are you looking at?" Just a rundown of questions I would ask anyone who
Mhm.
engage me for something that's kind of pricey, and at the end of the day, after they think about it with all the questions I asked them, they're like, you know what, we decided we actually need a website now instead of a brochure, you know, or whatever. I'm like, okay, great. I do that too. And yeah, a lot of people don't know what they need when they come to you.
Yeah. How about you,
All
Michelle?
right.
Have you run into this yet at all?
I've had challenging clients. I think that indecisiveness is a huge problem. I don't know how it relates like exactly to technology and like functionality and stuff like that, but like there's a huge level of subjectivity in designing copy and concept. So that's really challenging if you don't have decisive clients, or if you are working for somebody who's not ultimately the decision maker. So the person who's giving you the information to do the assignment ultimately is not the one who has to okay it in the end. I think that can be really challenging.
For sure.
But if you're working for an hourly rate, I just try to remember, like, if I have to do this 6 times, you're going to have to pay me six times over. And if that's how you want to spend your money, who am I to tell you otherwise? But that's not ideal. I mean, none of us want to work like that. I wouldn't say that's a bad client, though. I mean, that's the reality of like organizational psychology.
That's all I do is hourly. You know, every time I think about doing project-based work or value-based work around, you know, a project, and then put a large, you know, price tag on it, that's when people start to back away from the table, and they start to really sharpen their pencils, and the relationship like forks all of a sudden when they're like, well, we're gonna have to, you know, kick a bunch of other tires before we make this decision, etc. When in fact they're usually just looking for a super smart partner to try something out with, you know, to like just dip their feet in the water for. And so I give them an hourly rate. I say, we'll see how it goes. You know, we'll do one thing together. I'll keep it below this amount of hours, and we'll see how we like it. And everything has been great, you know. So I'm sticking with that right now.
Yeah, it's like the try before you buy kind of thing.
Yeah, but I am charging.
Well, I mean, try in terms of like I do this similar kind of thing where it's like my contracts are like very easy to get out of, and like I give people plenty of opportunity, and it's like that's the kind of the same thing I do. I'm just like, look, this is my rate, like let's work together. If it doesn't work out, like we'll go our separate ways, and that's, you know, no harm, no foul. It's a lot easier for someone to say yes to that than to say yes to like, okay, this app's going to cost you $100,000 to build, like please sign here.
Yeah, and by the way, we need 1/3 of that up front.
Yeah.
But that's what we like, Michelle. That's what you're going to have to do when you grow your agency. You need guarantees. You put these people to work.
Yeah. Well, and the hard part, like the hard part about that, and like we dealt with this a lot in the raise days, of course, was like the higher the price goes, the higher the expectations are to win the deal. And so like you're gonna dump a bunch of time, somebody's time, into making pitch decks for the you know, mock-ups, and like they want to see way more upfront. And so you're coming into a lot of these things already in the hole for sure.
Yeah.
So it's
coming from Michelle and I's world in advertising, you don't know shit about that.
I'm sure I don't. I'm sure it's way worse than.
There's like
you know, it's great because the agency doesn't pay anybody anymore. They just make them work twice as much. It works out awesome for the agency and horrible for everybody who works there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until, I mean, it takes a while for you to learn that, I think, when you're working at an agency. Some people really, it takes a little while before you get the portfolio where you're like, I've fucking been through the paces. Look at all this work, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
Well,
that's like a badge of honor in the agency, right?
It's people still like look at my LinkedIn and like, oh, Mullen. I'm like, yeah, that was like a decade ago. Okay. That was like 7 or 8 years ago. Okay, let's do one more question and then close off, okay? Okay.
Sure.
All right, so if you could travel back in time to your first freelance gig, this is going to be really hard for you, Michelle, and give yourself some business advice, the way you, things you wish you learned earlier. Nick, you may have already answered this with your finance question, but what do you wish you knew back then?
Do you want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you start? You're the most recent, so.
Okay. I alluded to this already. My advice to myself every morning when I get up and I look in the mirror is, Michelle, you do not have to take every project that is offered to you. Michelle, not everybody who wants to work with you is a good person for you to work with. I have to do some affirmations because I am not nearly discerning enough about the jobs that I take. And I think this is a really common pitfall early on when you're freelancing, is just to say yes to everything that comes your way. And I'm working on that, but I have famously poor boundaries.
That's a good one.
All right.
I think for me, it would have been basically to proceed as I was booked right away, but I think my advice to myself would have been act like you're not booked and do the things that you feel like you need to do to get inbound leads. And I still feel like I'm not doing enough there, and I'm more or less going from referral to referral to referral, and there's something uneasy about that to me. I would love to get to a place where I'm getting more inbound leads and it'll feel more secure to me. And I think when I first started this, I was all right, I'm booked. Let's just do the work and not worry about anything else until I need to get work again in a couple months or whatever. So yeah, start early and continue doing things often to kind of market yourself and get out there and make connections and bring the business leads in and not have to go searching for them all the time.
Yeah, I think that's what similarly, when you're super busy and you've said yes to multiple things because you fear a downtime, and you are there was a couple weeks for 2 months straight, I worked 60 to 70 hours a week for 2 months straight. And then after that, during that time, I did nothing. I did nothing else because I was just putting it all in there. I did nothing for myself. I didn't work. I didn't put up any portfolio stuff. I didn't bounce around on LinkedIn and chat up people. And then I had a big lull afterwards. I had slow times. It really, you have to keep the wheel moving. That's what I would tell myself last year.
Yeah.
And it's not just that, because that you have to have the discipline to do it. And that's the tough part.
Right.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's easy to have the discipline to do it when you're in a lull, when you don't have work. But then as soon as you get work, you're just oh, things are great again now. I'm not going to go write this blog post or reach out to this person or whatever. You're totally right. It's discipline, And
I'm going bowling. Fuck that. No, I'm not going bowling.
All right. Awesome.
All right.
Yeah, this was great. Thanks to our special guest, Michelle. Thank you. Super helpful.
Thanks, you guys.
To have you on.
This was fun.
Yeah. We should do this again. I think. Yeah, this was great. And so.
I have a request of Michelle.
Yeah.
Michelle, can you reach out to Mike Pilato for me and nudge him, respond to my LinkedIn message to him? Because at one point he said to me, "Listen, I have an app idea. I want to buy you a beer."
He told me about it. It's a fun one. He told me
Really?
what it is.
He hasn't told me what
fun.
it is yet.
I mean, don't do it, but it's fun.
Well, I'm not gonna. I don't even know yet. But what I invited him on, to this podcast type thing with Nick and I said, "Listen, we'll dissect your idea. The idea, he'll be out in the open." But
he would be a great person for this.
I thought so too. And
Shark
he's ignoring
for an app idea.
He's ghosted me because I made it too real for him. I was like, here, Thursday at 2.
I'll talk to him.
Sweet. We're going to have a new guest.
Fantastic.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. All right. I got to go. I got another meeting. Bye, everyone.